Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Jaded, another round of Hollywood wrap up, number 3. So, on this episode, we're going to talk about basically everything superhero related. I mean, that's literally what the majority of the news this week in Hollywood's been about, from casting to delays to spin offs to new series. We're going to talk about all of it right after the jump. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be the first to know about it. 2020 has been a doozy for anybody who's a movie fan. We've just had delays consistently all year since basically March. Bond's been pushed, Wonder Woman's been pushed, Black Widow. They've all found a way to, for some way or another, to get shoved back or to get shoved into an entirely different year. They've already been pushed to 2021. So right now, 2021 is looking stacked if all of those movies actually release. That's another question for another day, but right now, no one feels safe going to the theaters. Not no one. A lot of people don't feel safe going to the theaters, and because of that, studios don't feel safe or comfortable putting their $200 million properties into a theater to make no money. They've all used Warner Brothers and Tenet as a guinea pig, and they didn't like those results. So they decided to start moving things back again. So first one that moved is Black Widow. And then the Mouse House has decided to push that from November to May of 2021, and subsequently have moved some of their other Marvel properties, because a lot of the Marvel stuff works on a string. They started to move those back as well. Shang-Chi got delayed just 1 month, from, I believe it was May to June of 2021. And then Eternals moved from February of 2021 all the way to November. So it shows you that Eternals moved around Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi kept his date. Tells you that those movies don't really have that much of a string connection together, that one doesn't have to come in front of the other, but it does show you that they have a release window that they don't want to cannibalize each other. So they're trying to get them out of the way, and that's the best way to do it. If Widow's taking Eternals spot, Eternals can move and they'll just shove back Shang-Chi a bit. But also Death of an Nile, which was the new Agatha Christie sequel, second film from the Kenneth Branagh version of this Murder on the Orient Express. That got pushed back as well until December. It was supposed to come out in October, just got pushed back to December. I don't really know if these films that are just moving back to December are actually coming out this year. Truthfully, I don't think this year is happening really in the theaters. So I think movies like Bond and Dune, which are two of the bigger films left for the rest of the year, which would hurt my heart because both of those are two films that I'm desperately looking forward to. I would be very surprised if either of those movies actually release this year. Those are my thoughts. But also, another big film that was pushed an entire year was Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Was supposed to come out in December of this year, and I think if that tells you anything about where Bond and Dune are, if you're deciding to move actively from December of this year to December of the following year, there's something that you're like, yeah, this isn't happening. But I also know that West Side Story word is that it's a Oscar, an award picture, so it's just best to just get out of this way because we don't know what the hell this award season is going to be like. It's going to be like probably a one-man race, and we'll see whoever actually decides to release. Hey, you win because there's nothing else here. But they pushed an entire year. Those are our delays for the week. But we did get some news of some stuff that is coming, and also sticking within the comic realm. A couple of spin-offs that we got was from the Suicide Squad with James Gunn. John Cena is getting his own spin-off of the Peacemaker for HBO Max, which HBO Max is getting more content, and they're killing it in the content game right now. HBO has always been great with originals, and now they have a streaming service that they can put all their stuff on there. So they're getting the Peacemaker also written, and some of the episodes in the pilot at least directed by James Gunn. So it's going to have a fun style, a fun voice to it, and I think John Cena is a pretty charismatic and talented enough actor that I think he can carry off his own series, and it should be fun. The only problem that I have with it is that no one has seen the Suicide Squad, and from the looks of the clips that we have seen from the DC fandom, it seemed like this is going to be a movie that no one is safe and everybody is up for grabs, and now we're putting in a situation where we're going to get a spinoff where we're like, oh, well, maybe not everybody's up for grabs, because if this guy's already getting his own show, we sort of know the fate although it could be a prequel. But even still, if it's a prequel, then that means that I should be caring more about that character, and I'm going to see other characters. It loses some of the heat from the film if you're telling me that this character exists in a film outside of that. But I think if anybody can do it and do it well, having James Gunn's voice and humor with John Cena, it's a pairing match made in heaven. We're also getting a spinoff for The Boys, the Voight International Universe, if you will. Seth Rogen made an announcement that they're going to be doing a spinoff of The Boys, which, if you don't know, that show is amazing. It's sick. Episode six was phenomenal, the best of the year. But the series is talking about being the collegiate version of what happens with superheroes trying to sort of figure out their life, their powers, and figure out where they get placed in the world. Because we know placement's a big thing within the superhero world. It should be fun, should be dark, it should be twisted, and I'm all in. I think it should be a fun spin-off series that has a little bit more room to play around with doing its own thing, since it's not based on anything that already exists, whereas The Boys, for the most part, especially that first season, had a groundwork already laid. This one is kind of like, we have a world that exists and we can kind of run off to the races and do our own thing over here. So I'm curious and interested to see what that show becomes. We also heard that Marvel, keeping it going, is doing a spin-off and an original series for Mr. Nick Fury, which is thank you. It's about time. I feel like Nick Fury kind of has been lost a little bit in the last couple of like he wasn't really a part of Endgame at all. He sort of came in at the very end. So I'm interested to see where they put this in timeline form, because post Infinity War, we saw. I mean, post Infinity War, and then we see him in Spider Man. Post Spider Man, we learned that the Spider Man Nick Fury that was in that movie may not have been the Nick Fury that we all come to know, and that the Nick Fury that we all come to love and know is on a Kree spaceship somewhere in space. So I'm interested to see if they do something with that, or if they try to put Nick Fury and do a little bit more of a ground world one where it's more in line with whatever we're getting out of Falcon and Winter Soldier, or if we stay in space. I, for one, if you put Nick Fury in space, I'm all in. The only question that I have is, can you say MF on Disney Plus? I don't think that's allowed. The last thing is a couple of casting notes that I think could go either way for some people. One, The Rock posted that he had a convo with Aldous Hodge from The Invisible Man, and that he will be playing Hawkman for his Black Adam movie, which is, I think, great casting. A little bit of a colorblind casting, although Hawkman has changed from sometimes gender, and it's been a bit of an amalgamation of what that character is, but typically he's not been an African American male, so kudos to Aldous. And then the other bit of news is that Yara Shahidi, best known as the oldest daughter on Blackish, then spent off into Grownish, will be playing Tinkerbell in the live action film for Disney. I think it's Peter Pan and Wendy or something like that is what the actual title is going to be. Another colorblind casting, Tinkerbell being played, typically has been on screen as a pixie cut, yellowish, not really white, but glowing yellow person. But I think Yara's going to nail it. I think Yara is really talented. I'm one of the few people who actually saw The Son of Our Stars. The Sun is also a star. And I really thought it was really well done. A really smart, small budget romantic film. And she killed it. She was really good in it. So I'm excited to see her do more. What I'm more excited of is the response that happens when casting like this takes place. When you had Idris Elba as Heimdall, or even talks of being Bond, or Aldous being Hawkman, or Yara being Tinkerbell, when you take what has been generationally known as a white character and making them black, or in case of The Boys, making Stormfront a woman, or A-Train is black. I love it. I think what happens a lot, where we need to kind of realize there are a lot of people who don't have a problem with this, but there are quite a few people who get on this thing and they're like, hey, these characters are white, or they should stay white. You wouldn't like us if you take Black Panther and make him white. Well, those are two different things. I think there's a difference when you take a character that whose region or culture or um, their upbringing is fundamentally tied to who they are as a person. You can't make Black Panther not black. It's just like I don't think you would be able to truly make Thor not Norse to an extent. He himself. I think the rest of the world you can kind of have different versions within that, but I feel like he, for the most part, should be that. I think when you're tying in lineage and stuff like that, but I think when you're doing these other things like Tinkerbell's not a real character. That truthfully, Heimdall and all the rest of that stuff, they're not true. They're fictional characters. I think what we have to realize is that when these characters were first created or drawn, when Bond was first made, when all of these comics were first made, they were made by old white men. They were made by straight white men for the most part, who the world was only all white, was majority white, or the people who had rules or who had clout or were reading things or all that stuff were all white. And the world has changed since then. The world is not simply white. There are colors to it. There's mixes to it. There's LGBTQ. There's everything under the sun. And I think now that the world has changed to that, some of those things that used to, when you redo them or you bring them back in, you're like, hey, I don't think we should go back to this same approach where everything is simply white. So some of those things that you had a grip hold on, you may not have them anymore. But what's crazy is that we're not bastardizing your childhood. You still have those books, you still have those movies, you still have the originals to go back to and read and watch and listen to and enjoy. And it's like, hey, I've got this. But you're getting up on your soapbox and saying, hey, you can't play in this. That's not correct either. Because there have been years and years and years, decades, where people who look like me or people or girls or anyone else of color have read all of these things and loved these things and loved Spider-Man and loved Thor, but they didn't have that complete connection that you always had because there was some type of a disconnect because we didn't look like them. And now they're just offering a version of like, hey, let's offer a version or let's create something that where the tables are more even and not everybody is one way. And that's the way the world is. And I think anytime movies do that, it's for the better. And I love that Disney has this I don't give a flying you know what about your opinions. Ariel's gonna be black, Tinkerbell's gonna be black. And Kid Rocks, if you don't want to be here, cool. We're still gonna make millions regardless of whether or not your racist dollar is not a part of it. And I, for one, am glad that they have that stance. And I'm also glad that Yara, Aldous, and whoever the best person is for that job gets to take those without race and creed and color being the deciding factor. Because I think we can all attest that right now, Stormfront as a female on The Boys seems like, wow, that might have been the only. Why would we do it any other way? You don't know until you try it. Got to change up the pace a little bit. But that's it. That's the week. Literally everything is, for the most part, has been superhero or Disney related. It's all been in some way with the big films. A lot of the indie stuff's not been quiet right now because a lot of people are trying to just make chess moves to figure out how to navigate this landscape that exists within movies today. But that's it for now. If you want, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We also have a sister podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore, where we talk about all the classic movies like Gone with the Wind or Karate Kid and Back to the Future, and sort of discuss some of the problems those movies have in today's age and what some of those things you can't quite do anymore if you were trying to make these films now. Not necessarily saying they're bad movies, but just calling out what some of the problematic issues are. And you can find that podcast anywhere that podcasts are as well, and you can hit us up on there at I think we're on Twitter at can't do that pod. But that's it. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.